Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Jeanne.
Hi, Valentin.
We're pleased to welcome you to our TV set here in Lycée Jeanne d'Arc. Majoring in English Contemporary Studies, about 80 students from 12th to 13th grade alike have been working on representation. This topic is one of the many subjects they have studied during the year and the theme of our WebTV.
À peu près 80 élèves de première et de terminale, étudiants en spécialité anglais-monde contemporain, ont travaillé sur le thème de la représentation au cours de l'année, qui est en fait le thème de notre WebTV aujourd'hui. We open the ball with Sophia, who will be dealing with national stereotypes. Sophia, welcome on stage. Could you please give us your personal definition of stereotypes?
Nous ouvrons le bal avec Sophia, qui traitera des stéréotypes nationaux. Sophia, bienvenue sur scène. Pouvez-vous nous donner votre définition personnelle des stéréotypes?
To me, stereotypes are shared beliefs about the personal characteristics, usually personality traits, but often behaviors as well, of a determined group of people. It is in link with today's subject matter, which is representations.
D'après moi, les stéréotypes sont des croyances partagées sur des caractéristiques personnelles, souvent des traits de personnalité, mais aussi parfois des comportements. En effet, c'est aussi lié avec notre sujet d'aujourd'hui sur les représentations.
You're quite right, and I must say your definition is crystal clear. Do you have an example to illustrate what you just said?
Vous avez tout à fait raison, et je dois dire que votre définition est très claire. Avez-vous un exemple pour illustrer ce que vous venez de dire?
I sure do. For instance, according to the British, the French have the reputation of being cold and haughty as compared to them. We are also reported as people who say a lot of bad words, as Olivier Giraud said in his show How to Become a Parisian in 1 Hour.
Bien sûr que je le peux. Par exemple, d'après les Anglais, les Français sont perçus comme froids et hautains. Nous sommes également perçus comme des gens blasphémant beaucoup, comme Olivier Giraud le décrit dans son spectacle « Comment devenir parisien en 1 heure ».
How interesting. Could you tell us more about this show?
Intéressant. Pouvez-vous nous en dire plus sur cette émission?
You just took the words right out of my mouth. Last November, students had the chance to attend his performance, and luckily, some of them even had the opportunity to interview him.
Vous m'ôtez les mots de la bouche. En novembre dernier, des élèves ont eu la chance d'assister à son spectacle. Et certains d'eux ont même eu l'opportunité de l'interviewer.
Indeed, if you don't mind, let's have a look on the screen.
Si ça ne vous dérange pas, regardons cela à l'écran.
This evening, we are going to attend an amazing, wonderful show made by Olivier Giraud. So we are going to ask him a few questions.
So to start, could you tell us why you choose to perform your show in English and not in French?
Because I lived in America for 5 years, and when I was in America, all my customers asked me questions about Parisians and Paris.
Yeah.
And when I come back to Paris, okay, I'm going to try to write a show in English. That's why I'm playing in English.
That's great. So then why did you choose Parisians as the subject of your show?
Because everywhere in the world, people like dreaming about Paris and Parisians. If you speak about somebody from Rouen, you don't, you don't really mind.
Yes.
That's why I choose the Parisian subject.
And we know that you spent a few years in Florida as a maitre d'hotel. Is it easy to adapt to the US as a French person?
No, no, it's not very easy because we are very, very different. We are the opposite. In America, people are very enthusiastic, like, oh my God, it's great. And French, especially Parisians, are like, oh, always negative. So it was very hard. It took me perhaps, I would say, 1 year to be happy in America. Yeah, it was very hard at the beginning.
Could you tell us how was your meeting with the Queen Elizabeth?
It was completely crazy because one morning I received a letter from the English embassy. I opened the letter. I was like, "Oh, you're invited for the Queen's birthday." I was like, "Okay." So it's a joke. I mean, why the Queen is inviting me to her birthday? And I had a phone number, and I called. I said, "Excuse me, I received an invitation for the Queen's birthday. Is that a joke?" I mean, no, you're an English embassy, and we think that your show and show that you really care about English language. So that's why she invited you. It's like, okay. So I went there to the English embassy in Paris, and I talked to her for a few seconds. It was really weird to talk to the Queen.
Okay.
But she was nice. She was nice, but I was very impressed.
Actors and actresses have usually stage fright. What about you?
I'm not scared about stage. I was very scared the first time, so a long time ago, and now I already think that I'm not in danger. You know, I'm just here to have fun. People here, they're laughing. It's very easy. For me, it's harder to talk like on the phone to to URSAF or whatever, in front of like even 1,000 person. No problem. Okay. Yeah, I get used to.
Thanks for your time. It was a pleasure, and good luck for your show.
Thank you very much. Merci.
Well, that must have been so stressful. But tell me, do you perhaps have other examples of stereotypes?
Eh bien, ça a dû être très stressant. Mais dites-moi, avez-vous peut-être d'autres exemples de stéréotypes?
In fact, Stephen Clark, a British author, seems to know more than I do. He wrote Talk to the Snail, a bestseller in which he describes his life as an expat.
En fait, Stephen Clark, un auteur britannique, a l'air d'en savoir plus que je n'en sais. Il a écrit un best-seller, Talk to the Snail, ou Parler aux escargots, dans lequel il parle de sa vie en tant qu'expatrié.
I heard that Callista, your coworker and dear friend, participated in this project as well. Thank you for joining us, Callista. Both of you have decided to present the current media, hit referred to as BookTube or BookTok. Would you mind telling us more about it?
J'ai entendu dire que Callista, votre collègue et chère amie, a également participé à ce projet. Merci de vous joindre à nous, Callista. Vous avez toutes les deux décidé de présenter le hit médiatique actuel appelé BookTube ou BookTok. Pourriez-vous nous en dire plus?
Yes, of course. BookTube and BookTok offer young people and teens a new type of book representation.
BookTube et BookTok offrent à la jeunesse un nouveau type de recommandation littéraire.
It is also in link with our show's subject matter, representations, because some content creators love to present books reflecting issues such as racism, ecology, spirituality, religion, or even teens representation in today's world.
C'est également en lien avec le sujet de notre émission, Représentation, car certains créateurs de contenu aiment présenter des livres abordant des problématiques comme le racisme, l'écologie, la religion, la spiritualité, ou encore la représentation des adolescents dans notre monde.
On the other hand, it also tackles lighter subjects
as romance or comedy. I would say that people simply share their guilty pleasure of the moment.
D'un autre côté, des problématiques moins sérieuses sont aussi abordées, tout comme la romance ou la comédie. Les gens partagent leur plaisir coupable du moment.
Then, let's not forget to watch your report to better understand this topic.
N'oublions pas de regarder leur reportage pour mieux comprendre ce sujet.
Hi everyone, so today I'm with my dear friend Sophia. Hello. And we're going to give a preview of an amazing book entitled Talk to the Snail. Let's start! Talk to the Snail is a humoristic book which was written in 2006 by Stephen Clark, a British journalist who lived for 20 years in France. After all these years in France, he decided to make multiple books dealing with his own experiences with a touch of humor. And in fact, this book is pretty accurate and a must read if you want to travel in France. What is particular with this book is that it takes the form of the Ten Commandments, but in a funnier way for expats or any people who want to travel in France.
So, as you know, living as an expat in Paris can be quite difficult. However, Stephen Clark is here to help you discover the French habits with a little bit of humor, as he always do. If you've been overlooked at the boulangerie due to your adherence to the bizarre foreign custom of waiting in line, well, you are not alone, and this is what Stephen Clark is highlighting all along the book. He's here for you to become a real Parisian pétasse or a French connard in the easiest and fastest way ever. After reading this book, you will be able to slap back at the Parisians who are way too French to understand that, yes, they can be rude and haughty. These pieces of advice will help any of us, even the provinciaux, because don't forget that if you're not Parisian, you are automatically on the sidelines and you are simply walking around with a mark that says loser from La Campagne.
Like us.
Read this book and find out how to get good service from the grumpiest waiter, be polite by staying brutally rude at the same time, and employ the language of Molière in the funniest way. Everything you need is here. A significant plus is that it stays a funny, informative, and seriously useful guide to getting what you really want from the French people.
This is really hard to tell because the whole book was pretty accurate and well explained. I love when the author plays well with the phonetic sounds. For example, when he ends at every chapter splitting the words into two ones, like pourquoi will become pourquoi, and I think this is really funny. You also don't need to read the book in order, which is really convenient if you don't like reading that much. And what is also interesting is the last part in the epilogue when the author is doing a sort of conclusion, and in my opinion it really reflects the whole book. He says that they are arrogant, but we wish we had that much self-confidence. They are old-fashioned, but we would love to be that stylish. And finally, they are hypocritical, but we envy their ability to get away with it every time. We recommend you buying this book if you have French friends and have no idea what the hell they're thinking, but also if you have an infatuation with a French man or woman and have no idea what the hell they're thinking.
The French mentality is so fascinating to us because we do not understand it beyond what seems like a mix of class, snobbery, and something alluring. And we share some of their habits, but the French supremacy cannot be reached unless you are a pure Parisian. It is not our cases, and unluckily, we are doomed to be classified as losers from La Campagne. Since we live in Rouen, not Paris, if you're wondering where or what is Rouen, well, you must be Parisian or American to ask this question, so never mind les provinciaux and go drink your cheap rosé and smoke your 20th cigarette of the day.
This book is a funny, quick read which improves your lifestyle in France and prepare you to face the real French world. But we have La Tour Eiffel, no? So come on, we are waiting for you.
Bye bye, see you soon on Jeunes.
I don't know about you, but I've been convinced. I'll be sure to add it to my read list. Now, let's welcome Abdes and Katie as we drift towards another type of representation, namely engaged art. Abdes, Katie, thank you for being here with us today.
You're welcome.
Accueillons maintenant Abdes et Cathy alors que nous nous dirigeons vers un autre type de représentation, l'art engagé. Abdes et Cathy, merci d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui.
All right, the stage is all yours.
To start with, I would like to quote Sartre, a 20th century philosopher who once said, "It's about what we want to talk about, butterflies or Jewish condition." With this word, Sartre will depict their engaged artists and their commitments. Then he wants to explain that an artist who wants to go on the stamp or to convey a message will inevitably have to choose a controversial, topical, and societal subject. This leads our topic, which is representation and engaged art. Kathy, we start a short definition of engaged art.
Pour commencer, j'aimerais citer Sartre, un philosophe du XXe siècle qui a dit un jour « Il s'agit de savoir de quoi on veut parler, des papillons ou de la condition juive ». Par ces mots, Sartre dépeint les artistes engagés et leur engagement. Il explique ensuite qu'un artiste qui veut monter sur l'estrade et faire passer un message devra inévitablement choisir des sujets d'actualité et de société controversés. Ceci nous amène à notre sujet, la représentation et l'art engagé. Cathy va commencer par une brève définition de l'art engagé.
So there are different types of engaged art. First of all, there is diverted artwork, which consists in taking an existing and famous artwork and divert it to denounce social and political problems or issues. Then you can also create your own artwork to defend the cause. For example, Banksy diverted Les Nymphéas into Show Me the Money to denounce over-consumerism, but most of his artworks are completely original and unique pieces.
Il existe différents types d'art engagés. Tout d'abord, il y a l'art détourné, qui consiste à prendre une œuvre célèbre existante et à la détourner pour dénoncer des problèmes ou des questions sociales et politiques. Ensuite, on peut aussi créer sa propre œuvre pour défendre une cause. Par exemple, Banksy a détourné les Nymphéas en hashtag Show Me the Money pour dénoncer la surconsommation, mais la plupart de ses œuvres sont des pièces uniques et originales.
You mentioned Banksy. Can you tell us more about this artist?
Vous avez mentionné Banksy. Pouvez-vous nous en dire plus sur cet artiste?
Of course. So Banksy is an unknown yet very famous artist. Nowadays, he's the most famous artist on his time. He started painting on the early 90s to deliver and to denounce political anti-capitalism, anti-system messages with humor, sarcasm, and poetry. What's making his urban morals recognizable is his recurring representation of soldiers, rats, policemen, children, all made by stencils and spray paints.
Bien sûr, Banksy est donc un artiste inconnu mais très célèbre. Aujourd'hui, c'est l'artiste le plus célèbre de son temps. C'est un activiste britannique né à Bristol qui a commencé à peindre au début des années 90 pour dénoncer et délivrer un message politique, anticapitaliste ou anti-système, avec humour, sarcasme et poésie. Ce qui rend ses peintures murales urbaines reconnaissables, c'est sa représentation constante de rats, de soldats, de policiers et d'enfants à l'aide de peintures en aérosol et de pochoirs.
You've just told us Banksy is an activist, but could you explain to us why that is? What makes them an activist?
Vous venez de nous dire que Banksy est un activiste, mais pouvez-vous nous expliquer pourquoi? Qu'est-ce qui en fait un activiste?
Well, as we said before, Banksy makes artworks to denounce social and political problems. He also criticizes the art market and art world. An evident example is The Girl with Balloon, which has been shredded by Banksy himself after being sold for more than £1 million. He also gave an interview to criticize the art market, saying that today art is exposed and sold, and its only goal is to sit on a wall and get more and more expensive.
Comme nous l'avons déjà dit, Banksy crée des œuvres d'art pour dénoncer des problèmes sociaux et politiques. Il critique également le marché de l'art et le monde de l'art. Un exemple évident est La fille au ballon, qui a été déchiquetée par Banksy lui-même après avoir été vendue pour plus d'1 million de livres. Il a également donné une interview pour critiquer le marché de l'art en disant qu'aujourd'hui, l'art est exposé et vendu et son seul but est de rester sur un mur et de devenir plus en plus cher.
For him, art must be used to help people, not only giving awareness, but more also directly. For example, Banksy used his money to get a ship that called Louise Michel, and he asked a German captain to help and rescue more than 200 migrants. Indeed, Banksy explained that he couldn't use the money. He made a mural with his migrants and to do anything but help those poor people. He got some legal problems because of this, but he ended without any legal consequences.
Pour lui, l'art doit être utilisé pour aider les gens, non seulement en les sensibilisant, mais aussi plus directement. Par exemple, Banksy a utilisé son argent pour obtenir un bateau qu'il a nommé Louise Michel et a demandé l'aide d'un capitaine allemand pour aller sauver plus de 200 migrants. En effet, Banksy a expliqué qu'il ne pouvait pas utiliser l'argent qu'il a gagné avec ses peintures murales sur les migrants à Calais pour faire autre chose qu'aider ces personnes. Il a eu d'autres problèmes juridiques à cause de cela, mais il a finalement terminé sans aucune conséquence.
What about your opinion? To what extent do you think engaged art can be useful?
Et vous, quelle est votre opinion? Dans quelle mesure pensez-vous que l'art engagé peut être utile?
It is useful in so many ways. The first thing coming to my mind is that everyone's sensitive to art, which makes it the best way to raise awareness about a subject that doesn't get enough attention and kind of encourage people to think about it. Most of the time, he uses striking elements that can be taken at face value so that people can easily understand the message delivered and no one can deny his clear-cut opinion.
C'est utile à bien des égards. La première chose qui me vient à l'esprit est que tout le monde est sensible à l'art, ce qui en fait le meilleur moyen de sensibiliser les gens à des sujets auxquels on ne prête pas assez d'attention et d'encourager les gens à y réfléchir. La plupart du temps, il utilise des éléments frappants qui peuvent être pris au premier degré, de sorte que les gens peuvent facilement comprendre le message délivré et personne ne peut nier son opinion claire et nette.
However, painting and drawing aren't the only form of engaged art. As we said, music is an excellent way to make voices heard, like did Lady Gaga with the song Burn This Way, which is fight for LGBTQIA rights. The same for the singer Her, which she had a song called I Can't Breathe. It was released on the George Floyd's murder and the Black Lives Matter protest.
Cependant, la peinture et le dessin ne sont pas les seules formes d'art engagées. Comme nous l'avons dit, la musique est aussi un excellent moyen de faire entendre des voix, comme l'a fait Lady Gaga avec Born This Way, une chanson dans laquelle elle se bat pour les droits des LGBTQIA+, ou encore la chanteuse Her avec sa chanson I Can't Breathe, sortie après le meurtre de George Floyd et la manifestation Black Lives Matter.
Interesting. To conclude this column, would you happen to have a topical example for the audience so they can get it better?
Pour conclure cette chronique, auriez-vous un exemple d'actualité pour le public afin qu'il puisse mieux comprendre?
Regarding what's happening in the world today, a lot of engaged artists decided to take the Russo-Ukrainian conflict as a subject for their artwork. For example, Seth, a French street artist, designed L'Ukraine en marche in Paris. However, this war is not the only one shared by engaged artists. Indeed, most of them look into all humanity's suffering and even the ones who are less to known publicized.
Au regard de ce qui se passe dans le monde d'aujourd'hui, beaucoup d'artistes engagés ont décidé de prendre le conflit russo-ukrainien comme sujet de leurs œuvres. Par exemple, Seth, un artiste de rue français, a créé L'Ukraine en marche à Paris. Cependant, cette guerre n'est pas la seule que partagent les artistes engagés. En effet, la plupart d'entre eux se penchent sur toutes les souffrances de l'humanité, même celles qui sont le moins médiatisées.
Well, this has been quite inspiring and very convincing. Thank you, Kathy and Abdes, for depicting the greatness of engaged art and Bansky. Let's sustain our momentum as we welcome Bijou and Luan to join us. So we know that you'll be talking about society and its dysfunction. Would you mind going in depth on the subject? So, welcome, Bijou and Luan. So, we know that you'll be talking about society and its dysfunction. Would you mind going in depth on the subject?
Nous savons donc que vous allez parler de la société et de ses dysfonctionnements. Pourriez-vous approfondir sur ce sujet?
Well, it is common knowledge that all society has many flaws. As history unfolds, it gets even worse. But what is shocking to know is that a lot of people do not take action for it.
Il est bien connu que notre société a de nombreux défauts et, au fur et à mesure que l'histoire se déroule, la situation devient encore pire. Mais ce qui est choquant ici, c'est que beaucoup de gens ne prennent pas de mesures pour y remédier.
That's why today I will chronicle this with a well-known artist called Steve Cutts, who decided to act a long time ago.
C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, notre chronique porte sur un artiste bien connu, Steve Cutts, qui a décidé d'agir il y a déjà longtemps.
The flaws of our society, interesting topic indeed, but may I ask, who is Steve Cutts and what he's done? Can you tell us more about him?
Les défauts de notre société, un sujet intéressant, mais puis-je demander qui est ce Steve Cutts et ce qu'il a fait? Pouvez-vous nous en dire plus sur lui?
Well, in a nutshell, Steve Cutts is a British illustrator and animator whose works take form of a satire on the excesses of modern society. His style is inspired by animated films of the 1930s and 1940s, as well as modern comic books and graphic novels.
En bref, Steve Cutts est un illustrateur et animateur britannique dont les œuvres prennent la forme d'une satire des excès de la société moderne. De plus, son style s'inspire des films d'animation des années 1930 et 1940, ainsi que des bandes dessinées et des romans graphiques modernes.
I clearly see what kind of artist he is now. However, I'm a bit curious. You said he represents the excesses of modern society through a satirical eye. How does he do so?
Firstly, we can assume that his artworks can be very shocking, as his images are unfiltered, realistic, and very direct, despite being in cartoon form. That's to say that he often uses a significant contrast between the form and the content he conveys. To illustrate our statement, we can rely on his artwork Untitled Man, in which shows a human who cruelly grabs two snakes to put them by force at his feet as if they were mere boats. It's horrendous to see.
Tout d'abord, nous pouvons supposer que ces œuvres peuvent être très choquantes, car ces images sont sans filtre, réalistes et très directes malgré leur forme de dessin animé. C'est-à-dire qu'il utilise souvent un contraste important entre la forme et le contenu qu'il transmet. Pour illustrer notre propos, nous pouvons nous appuyer sur son œuvre intitulée Man, dans lequel nous voyons un homme qui attrape cruellement 2 serpents pour les mettre de force à ses pieds, comme s'il s'agissait de simples bottes. C'est horrible à voir.
I've seen this video. It went viral on social media for its gore and disturbing graphic animation, right?
J'ai déjà vu cette vidéo. Elle est devenue virale sur les médias sociaux pour son côté gore et ses animations graphiques dérangeantes, non?
Indeed. However, it is not the only way used by Steve Cutts, since he's famous for reversing the roles between animals and humans, especially in his animation entitled The Turning Point. Reversing the roles fortunately tends to draw the audience's attention to what animals go through, which encourages us to put ourselves in their place. Animals have now turned the tables and humans are in a weaker position.
En effet, mais ce n'est pas le seul moyen utilisé par Steve Cutts, puisqu'il est également célèbre pour avoir inversé les rôles entre animaux et humains dans son animation intitulée The Turning Point. Cette inversion des rôles a heureusement tendance à attirer l'attention du public sur ce que vivent les animaux, ce qui nous incite à nous mettre à leur place. Ceux-ci ont renversé la situation et les humains sont en position de faiblesse.
From this point of view, one can feel the distress and the urgency of us and the animal's situation that he could not have realized if he had remained stuck in a human's position. But he's also known for comparing all society with rats in his animation entitled Happiness.
De ce point de vue, on peut ressentir la détresse et l'urgence de la situation de la Terre et des animaux qu'il n'aurait pas pu réaliser s'il était resté bloqué dans un point de vue humain. Il est également connu pour avoir comparé notre société aux rats dans son animation intitulée Happiness.
Wow, and how is it that he is comparing humans with rats? Why rats in particular?
Comment se fait-il qu'il compare les humains aux rats? Pourquoi les rats en particulier?
It's some kind of allegory to denounce a serious issue, namely overpopulation and the effect of the mass culture changing social practices and the consequences of it on everyday life. However, Steve Cutts undoubtedly made a reference to the expression rat race, which alludes to humans attempting to earn a reward such as cheese in vain. In this case, it's happiness. By giving a dramatic side, he calls modern society into question so as to open people's eyes on serious issues like consumerism, addictions, modern capitalism and contemporary society, and all of them have a universal scope.
Il s'agit d'une sorte d'allégorie pour dénoncer un problème grave, à savoir la surpopulation et les effets de la consommation de masse qui modifient les pratiques sociales et leurs conséquences sur la vie quotidienne. Cependant, Steve Cutts a sans doute fait une référence à l'expression « rat race » qui fait allusion aux humains qui tentent de gagner une récompense comme le fromage, en vain, dans ce cas-là, le bonheur. En donnant un côté dramatique, il remet en question la société moderne afin d'ouvrir le regard des gens sur des sujets graves comme le consumérisme, les addictions, le capitalisme moderne, la société contemporaine, et tous ces sujets ont une portée universelle.
Indeed, rats have a significant place in the engaged art and the representation of the society. As for example, Banksy and his numerous artworks with rats, but they have a completely different meaning for him. They're like some kind of symbol of illegal proliferation, unwanted from the city, just like street artists, in fact.
En effet, les rats ont une place importante dans l'art engagé et la représentation de la société, comme par exemple Banksy et ses nombreuses œuvres comportant des rats, mais ceux-ci ont une signification complètement différente pour lui. Ils sont comme une sorte de symbole de prolifération illégale, indésirable de la ville, tout comme les artistes de rue.
All things considered, would you say that his artwork has a real impact on our society?
Au final, diriez-vous que son œuvre a un réel impact sur notre société?
Actually, it has, since his artworks are very inclusive and accessible to people all around the world, partly thanks to social media where he reached 55 million views.
En réalité, c'est le cas, puisque son art est inclusif et accessible aux personnes du monde entier, en partie grâce aux réseaux sociaux où il accumule 55 millions de vues.
However, things are changing little by little. There are positive impacts, but it takes some time since the stakes are very high. What I mean by that is that we have deeply rooted habits and we know we should change them, but they are very ingrained in our customs and therefore difficult to kick. And it's undeniable that after watching Steve Cutts' art and animation, it's impossible to remain impassive and especially insensitive in the face of huge changes.
Cependant, les choses changent petit à petit. Il y a des impacts positifs, mais cela prend du temps car les enjeux sont très importants. Ce que je veux dire par là, c'est que nous avons des habitudes fortement ancrées et nous savons que nous devrions les changer, mais elles sont très ancrées dans nos mœurs et donc difficiles à bousculer. Il est indéniable qu'après avoir regardé l'art et l'animation de Steve Cutts, il est impossible de rester impassible et surtout insensible face à l'urgence des changements.
Well, I must admit that even though I had already seen some of his work, never had I heard the name Stephen Cutts before today. So thank you, Bijou and Luan, for this fascinating column.
Thank you.
Merci donc à Bijou et Luan pour cette chronique passionnante.
Thanks, it was a pleasure.
Next up, we have Liam, a high school student who has Next up, we have Liam, a high school student who has taken interest in gender inequalities within an unexpected area that he's going to tell us all about today. Hello, Liam.
Nous poursuivons avec Liam, un lycéen qui s'est intéressé aux inégalités entre les sexes dans un domaine inattendu dont il va nous parler aujourd'hui.
Indeed, while I was visiting a museum, I realized that the majority of naked works of art were female figures, but very few artists were women. So I looked into this unfamous subject, and during my research, I found some very alarming figures that made me realize the seriousness of the situation. In fact, in 1989, less than 5% of the artists in the modern art section were women, but 85% of the naked figures were female ones.
En effet, alors que je visitais un musée, je me suis rendu compte que la majorité des œuvres d'art de nus exposées étaient des figures féminines, mais très peu d'artistes étaient des femmes. Je me suis donc penchée sur ce sujet inconnu. Au cours de mes recherches, j'ai trouvé des chiffres très alarmants qui m'ont fait prendre conscience de la gravité de la situation. En effet, en 1989, moins de 5% des artistes de la section d'art moderne étaient des femmes, mais 85% des figures nues l'étaient.
But the artistic field is rather restricted and therefore reaches fewer people. So are there really revolts concerning this subject?
Mais le domaine de l'art est assez restreint et touche donc moins de personnes. Y a-t-il donc de véritables révoltes à ce sujet?
Contrary to what one might think, several artists have denounced these inequalities, including Guerrilla Girls. In fact, this group of women artists, formed in 1985 in New York, have produced a poster with the famous sentence, "Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum?" This poster has been translated into several languages, and the figures have been updated over the years, which proves its impact in the world of art and the importance of this issue.
Contrairement à ce que l'on pourrait penser, plusieurs artistes ont dénoncé ces inégalités, dont les Guerrilla Girls. En effet, ce groupe de femmes artistes, formé en 1885 à New York, a réalisé une affiche avec la célèbre phrase « Les femmes doivent-elles être nues pour entrer au Met Museum ?» Cette affiche a été traduite en plusieurs langues et les chiffres ont été actualisés, ce qui prouve son impact dans le monde de l'art et l'importance de cette question.
Thank you, Liam, for this column. You can actually find two of the original posters of the Guerrilla Girls in the Ingres Museum in Montauban.
Vous pouvez à ce jour trouver deux des posters originaux des Guerrilla Girls au musée Ingres de Montauban. Thank you, Liam.
And Jeanne, who with the help of an interview will be introducing us to another kind of representation, photojournalism, and more precisely the profession of photojournalist.
Nous accueillons maintenant Dia et Orjane qui, avec l'aide d'une interview, vont nous présenter une autre sorte de représentation, le photojournalisme et plus précisément la profession de photojournaliste.
Hello everyone, I'm Dia, and our subject of talk today is photojournalism. Our question is, how can photojournalism represent a situation, an event, or even society? To discuss this issue, I won't be alone. Jeanne, a photojournalist, has come to join us and will tell us more about this job. Hello Jeanne, thank you for being here. It's a big pleasure to welcome you in our show.
Bonjour à tous, notre sujet de discussion aujourd'hui est le photojournalisme. Nous allons donc essayer de comprendre comment le photojournalisme peut-il représenter une situation, un événement ou même une société. Pour discuter de cette problématique, je ne suis pas seule. Jeanne, une experte en photojournalisme, nous fait l'honneur de sa présence afin de nous éclairer sur les fondements de ce métier. Bonjour Jeanne, c'est un grand plaisir de t'accueillir dans notre émission.
Oh thanks, the pleasure is mine.
Oh merci, tout le plaisir est pour moi.
So, to start, could you tell us your definition of photojournalism? What is a photojournalist job like on a daily basis?
Pour commencer, pouvez-vous nous donner votre propre définition du photojournalisme? À quoi ressemble ce travail au quotidien?
Of course, photojournalism is journalism that uses images to tell a news story. It usually only refers to still images, but can also refer to video used in broadcast journalism. Photojournalists contribute to the news media and help communities connect with one another. They must be well informed and are able to deliver news in a creative manner that is both informative and entertaining.
Bien sûr, le photojournalisme consiste à utiliser des images pour raconter une histoire. Il se réfère généralement à des images fixes, mais peut également se référer à la vidéo utilisée dans le journalisme de diffusion. Les photojournalistes contribuent aux médias d'information et aident les communautés à se connecter les unes aux autres. Ils doivent être bien informés et capables de transmettre des informations de manière créative, à la fois informative et divertissante.
And what characterizes photojournalism?
Qu'est-ce qui caractérise le photojournalisme?
Photojournalism is distinguished from other close branches of photography, such as war photography, celebrity photography, or street photography, by having a rigid ethical framework which demands an honest but impartial approach that tells a story in strictly journalistic terms.
Le photojournalisme se distingue d'autres branches proches de la photographie, telles que la photographie de guerre, la photographie de célébrité ou la photographie de rue. Il nécessite un cadre éthique rigide qui exige une approche honnête mais impartiale, qui raconte une histoire en termes strictement journalistiques.
So, how can photojournalism shine a light on the current events happening in the world?
Et comment le photojournalisme peut-il mettre en lumière les événements actuels dans le monde?
Photojournalism can shine a light on current events by denouncing injustices and crimes such as the war in Ukraine or the Uyghurs in China, for instance. Photojournalism shows the whole world what is kept hidden and brings visibility to historical events. War photographs are the most poignant because they capture the harsh reality and human cruelty.
Le photojournalisme peut faire la lumière sur l'actualité en dénonçant les injustices et les crimes, comme par exemple la guerre en Ukraine ou les Ouïghours en Chine. Le photojournalisme montre au monde entier ce qui est gardé caché et apporte une visibilité aux événements historiques. Les photos de guerre sont les plus poignantes car elles capturent la dure réalité et la cruauté humaine.
And do you have an example in mind?
Avez-vous un exemple en tête?
Yes, a good example is the iconic photo of the girl burnt with napalm, which exposes the bitterness of the Vietnam War.
Un bon exemple est la photo emblématique de la jeune fille brûlée au napalm qui expose l'amertume de la guerre au Vietnam.
Do photojournalists face some risks in their job while trying to represent the reality of facts as it is and respecting the 5 core principles of journalism?
Les photojournalistes courent-ils des risques dans leur travail en essayant de représenter la réalité des faits tels qu'ils sont et en respectant les 5 principes fondamentaux du journalisme?
Of course, photojournalists encounter many dangers. When they go to work in countries with geopolitical conflicts, they can lose their lives. When they take pictures of burning buildings or floors filled with bombs, death is a possibility. So yes, the job of a photojournalist isn't the most secure because they put themselves in danger voluntarily to offer the world images of quality and realism.
Dans leur travail, ils rencontrent bien sûr de nombreux dangers. Lorsqu'ils vont travailler dans des pays en proie à des conflits géopolitiques, ils peuvent bien évidemment perdre la vie. Lorsqu'ils photographient des bâtiments en feu ou des étages remplis de bombes, la mort est possible. Alors oui, le métier de photojournaliste n'est pas le plus sûr. Ils se mettent volontairement en danger pour offrir au monde des images de qualité et pleines de réalisme.
Thank you, Joanne. It was really interesting.
Merci beaucoup, Jeanne. C'était un plaisir de vous recevoir. Ce fut très intéressant.
You're welcome. The pleasure was mine.
De rien, le plaisir est pour moi.
Well, that is a quite unique job you have there, but it's incredibly interesting nonetheless. To stay on the subject of journalism, students from our school have actually had the opportunity to attend a conference on journalism led by Mr. Grisbeck. Here is now a short report of the interview that was shot after the conference.
Les élèves du lycée ont eu la chance d'assister à une conférence sur le journalisme animée par Monsieur Grisbeck. Voici maintenant des extraits de l'interview réalisée après la conférence.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Pensez-vous que de nos jours, le travail du journaliste consiste encore et avant tout à montrer et à représenter la société?
Oui, plus que jamais, surtout dans une situation où toutes les professions sont attaquées, où il y a une grosse défiance qui s'exerce en particulier sur mon métier, sur le métier de journaliste. Plus que jamais, on doit pouvoir raconter au plus près de la vérité ce qui se passe, quels sont les événements, quels sont les changements dans notre société. Oui.
Selon vous, quels sont les principes fondamentaux du journalisme?
Alors, le principe fondamental, c'est d'abord de vérifier l'information, et une fois qu'on l'a vérifiée, de la revérifier, et une fois qu'on l'a revérifiée, de la revérifier, parce qu'on est confronté de plus en plus à une fausse information qui est diffusée de façon volontaire pour nous tromper, pour nous faire croire des choses absolument épouvantables, alors qu'on est dans un monde complexe, qu'on doit essayer de mieux le comprendre, de le contextualiser le plus possible. Donc ça doit être d'abord et avant tout de vérifier l'information et d'aller là encore au plus près de la vérité.
Quelles sont les principales difficultés rencontrées par les journalistes?
La difficulté, c'est d'arriver à convaincre des gens qu'ils soient d'accord pour nous parler ou pour nous montrer ce qu'ils sont en train de faire. Il y a des professions où, sans problème, on accepte de nous recevoir, on accepte de raconter ce qu'on fait. Il y a aussi d'autres professions où on cherchera forcément un mystère et on nous dira que c'est pas possible.
Pensez-vous des représentations erronées courantes dans les médias ainsi que des fake news?
En ce qui concerne les fake news, ça n'a rien à voir. L'erreur est humaine, c'est pas tout le monde peut se tromper. C'est une volonté de tromper l'autre, c'est-à-dire qu'on sait que c'est une fausse information et on va la diffuser parce qu'on a un objectif particulier qui est en général d'affaiblir l'autre. Donc la bataille qu'on doit mener, c'est une bataille contre les fake news.
Ne pensez-vous pas qu'il est difficile de rester impartial dans certains sujets abordés? Et quel est le degré d'impartialité que vous devez garder pour produire un bon article ou un bon reportage?
Deux types de journalistes. Il y a le journaliste de terrain qui va chercher l'information sur place, et lui, on ne lui demande pas son point de vue. Lui, on nous demande, ce qui est déjà un gros travail, de raconter le plus honnêtement possible ce qu'il voit, ce qu'il entend. Après, il y a un autre type de journaliste, qui est un journaliste éditorialiste, à qui, lui, on demande son avis. Donc, on ne peut pas faire les deux.
Et comment décidez-vous de l'approche à aborder pour créer un certain type de reportage? Est-ce que vous avez une seule méthode ou est-ce que vous changez selon le type de sujet traité?
C'est-à-dire qu'en fonction du moment, en fonction de vos états d'âme, à vous aussi à ce moment-là, en fonction aussi du fait qu'on est plusieurs. Et je suis moi rédacteur, je suis avec un caméraman qui est en fait un journaliste reporter d'image, qui est journaliste en même titre que moi. Je suis en conversation permanente avec lui, je suis en train de douter en permanence avec lui, dans l'idée que finalement on est moins bête à plusieurs que tout seul, et qu'on doit arriver ensemble à trouver des réponses aux différentes questions auxquelles on...
So yes, fake news, what a big deal. If you're not sure you know... If you're not sure you know what they actually are, just watch this animated recap made by 5 students in order to be up to date on the matter.
Et oui, quel sacré problème ces fausses informations. Si vous n'êtes pas bien sûr de savoir de quoi il s'agit exactement, regardez attentivement ce petit récapitulatif animé réalisé par 5 lycéens.
What is fake news? First, you may wonder how come people are so easily manipulated by fake news. Well, these people can be bombarded with information from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. As a consequence, it makes it difficult for them to distinguish fake from real news. Moreover, fake information may sometimes come from a friend or a relative. That is to say, people they trust, hence their assumption that the fake news is valid.
Lately, fake news has been largely disseminated online since political parties wish to influence public opinion with an explicit or implicit agenda. It's propaganda. What is important to know about this kind of disinformation is that these wrongdoers are mainly helped by social media such as Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Social bots have further magnified the spread of fake news for a few years now. This said, how can you spot and counteract this new kind of information? First, you could try and educate yourself or others, that is to say, foster critical thinking. What could further limit the proliferation of false information is to check websites created to keep track of it, such as PolitiFact or Snopes. Last but not least, search engines or social media's search and display algorithms must be improved, but it would take more resources.
I think we got an useful explanation concerning causes and solutions against this entirely fabricated or made up information, that is to say, fake news.
Maintenant, grâce à ce petit récapitulatif, vous en savez plus et comprenez mieux ce que sont les fake news.
So next we are welcoming Adèle and Lola, who will be talking about fake news in politics. You may have heard of the danger it represents. Today you are going to get a full explanation on the impacts it's currently having on the Russo-Ukrainian conflict.
Nous allons maintenant accueillir Adèle et Lola, qui vont nous parler des fake news dans la politique. Vous avez peut-être déjà entendu parler du danger qu'elles représentent et aujourd'hui, vous allez avoir une explication complète de l'impact qu'elles ont actuellement sur le conflit russo-ukrainien.
Thanks for coming. Now, first of all, could you explain to us how the conflict is represented in the media?
Merci d'être là. Maintenant, pourriez-vous d'abord expliquer comment le conflit est représenté par les médias?
Hello, sir. We are very honored to be here today. Thanks for having us. I will start by saying that the media represent both sides of the conflict, the Russian government and the Ukrainian people. We are first going to focus on how artists have denounced the violence of the war and the denial of Vladimir Putin, using some political cartoons to illustrate our points.
Bonjour à tous, nous sommes très honorés d'être ici aujourd'hui. Merci de nous recevoir. Je vais commencer par dire que les médias représentent les deux parties du conflit, le gouvernement russe et le peuple ukrainien. Nous allons d'abord nous concentrer sur la façon dont les artistes ont dénoncé la violence de la guerre et le déni de Vladimir Poutine en utilisant quelques caricatures politiques pour illustrer nos propos.
So here, as you can see, Russia is depicted
as an ugly and threatening bear, but it actually represents Putin more than Russia, because we shouldn't forget that the majority of the Russian people disagrees with his actions. This cartoon shines a light on how censorship impacts the freedom of speech, which is a basic human right.
Donc ici, comme vous pouvez le voir, la Russie est représentée comme un ours laid et menaçant. Mais en réalité, il représente davantage Poutine que la Russie. Car il ne faut pas oublier que la majorité du peuple russe n'est pas d'accord avec ses actions. Cette caricature met en lumière l'impact de la censure sur la liberté d'expression, qui est un droit humain fondamental.
Many Russian musicians and bands have used their voices to express an opinion that didn't please Putin's government. His policy being violence only, he takes strong actions to punish and control them. He understands the power art holds as a means of expression, and therefore tries to silence artists as much as he can through those authoritarian measures.
De nombreux musiciens et groupes russes ont utilisé leur voix pour exprimer une opinion qui ne plaisait pas au gouvernement de Poutine. Sa politique étant basée sur la violence uniquement, il prend des mesures fortes pour les punir et les contrôler. Il comprend le pouvoir que détient l'art en tant que moyen d'expression et tente donc de réduire les artistes au silence autant qu'il le peut par ses mesures autoritaires.
On this other cartoon, a new issue appears to us: the outrageous denial of Putin's will to conquer and destroy. It shows how Putin's decision to harm and kill is behind every soldier. There are actual bodies laying lifeless on the ground and ruins of buildings in the background, yet he still denies it all.
Sur cette autre caricature, de nouvelles problématiques nous apparaissent. Le déni scandaleux de la volonté de conquête et de destruction de Poutine. Elle montre comment la décision de Poutine de nuire et de tuer se cache derrière chaque soldat. Il y a des corps gisants sans vie sur le sol et des ruines de bâtiments en arrière-plan, mais il continue à nier tout cela.
To conclude with the representation of fake news through art, now we all know that everyone can easily create fake news on every topic, which is a real danger in our life and specifically in politics.
Pour conclure sur les représentations des fake news à travers l'art, nous savons tous que tout le monde peut facilement créer des fake news sur n'importe quel sujet, ce qui représente un réel danger dans notre vie et plus particulièrement en politique.
As this cartoon showed us, the reality is affected, and now we can't be sure that some news are in fact real. To deal with art and media content, they are mainly used in a satirical way or to make fun of something, as it is shown in the cartoons.
Comme ces caricatures nous l'ont montré, la réalité est affectée et nous ne pouvons plus être sûrs que certaines nouvelles sont en fait réelles. En ce qui concerne l'art et le contenu des médias, ils sont principalement utilisés de manière satirique pour rendre quelque chose de ridicule, comme le montrent les caricatures.
However, they are really dangerous as a way to spread fake news, because they spread a message. And if cartoons are purposely used in the wrong way, like fake news, the whole world is affected, because art is something that everyone can understand without words to explain it. As the saying goes, a picture is worth 100 words.
Cependant, ils sont vraiment dangereux comme moyen de diffusion de fake news, car ils diffusent un message et quand les dessins animés sont délibérément utilisés à tort comme des fake news, le monde entier peut être affecté parce que l'art est quelque chose que tout le monde peut comprendre sans explication. Comme dit le proverbe, une image vaut mieux que 100 mots.
Interesting. And can you tell us more about the use of social media in this conflict, more precisely on Putin's side?
Well, I think we should start by briefly talking about Putin's propaganda, and then I explain how he uses social media and especially how he controls it and TV channels as well. Putin uses a lot of propaganda to convince Russians that what he is doing in Ukraine is right, by saying that he is in fact denazifying Ukraine. Social media became a problem for him because people were trying to tell Russia's civilians that Putin is lying to them. In response, Putin prohibited the use of some social media like Facebook and Instagram. He also increased the restrictions on TV channels and journalists, which were current norms before.
Eh bien, je pense que nous devrions commencer par parler brièvement de la propagande de Poutine, et ensuite je vous expliquerai comment il utilise les réseaux sociaux et surtout comment il les contrôle, ainsi que les chaînes de télévision. Poutine utilise beaucoup de propagande pour convaincre les Russes, mais ce qu'il fait en Ukraine est juste, en disant qu'il dénazifie le pays. Les réseaux sociaux sont devenus un problème pour lui parce que les gens essayaient de dire aux civils russes que Poutine leur ment. En réponse, Poutine a interdit l'utilisation de certains réseaux sociaux comme Facebook et Instagram. Il a également augmenté la restriction sur les chaînes de télévision et les journalistes, qui était la norme en vigueur auparavant.
To finish with something more general, I will talk about the impact of fake news on people and the different ways of spreading disinformation in the world. The impact of fake news on people is huge because they can't make the difference between real news and fake news. So they are lost and sometimes they don't believe in facts and trust deceptive information. Nowadays, fake news became a problem because people don't trust the media anymore and they don't know where to find real news. There is a more important impact on the trust we put in government and society.
Pour finir avec quelque chose de plus général, je parlerai de l'impact des fake news sur les gens en général et les différentes manières de répandre la désinformation dans le monde. L'impact sur les gens est énorme car ils ne peuvent pas faire la différence entre les vraies nouvelles et les fake news. Ils sont donc perdus et parfois ne croient pas aux faits et se fient aux informations trompeuses. De nos jours, les gens ne font plus confiance aux médias et ne savent plus où trouver les vraies informations. Il y a aussi un impact plus important sur la confiance que nous accordons au gouvernement et à la société.
With fake news, people can change their opinions about a lot of things, and it can cause tensions between people and society. It can really threaten our democracy, and Even during the presidential elections, there is much misinformation and there is also a lot of disinformation, which have a drastic impact on voters.
Avec les fake news, les gens peuvent changer d'avis sur beaucoup de choses et cela peut causer des tensions entre l'homme et la société. Cela peut vraiment menacer notre démocratie parce que même pendant les élections présidentielles, il y a eu beaucoup de désinformation qui ont eu un réel impact drastique sur les électeurs.
Well, thank you for enlightening us on this subject. To go on with fake news, let's focus on a quite recent particular aspect of spreading disinformation, deepfakes. To learn more about this topic, let's watch a short report made by Julia and Jeanne.
Pour continuer sur le thème des fake news, intéressons-nous à un aspect particulier assez récent de la diffusion de la désinformation, les deepfakes. Pour en savoir plus à ce sujet, voici un court reportage réalisé par Julien et Jeanne.
Have you ever heard about deepfakes? You've probably already seen Trump's famous deepfakes or any other political figures' deepfakes on social media. This is a topical issue and has become a more and more popular way to misinform people on social media. But what's a deepfake?
The first deepfakes were created in 1997 and were used for the dubbing of films. They can be defined as hyper-realistic video or images of someone appearing to do or say things they didn't do or say, like a mask. Furthermore, they made using two different AIs. The encoder scans multiple pictures from the deepfake's face and creates faked images. Then the decoder compares the real and fake pictures until they are as similar as possible.
The purposes of deepfakes are mostly negative. They are principally used in pornography with women as the principal target, for example, the SIP deep nude. We can also see them used to humiliate people, blackmail, attack organization, unsettle diplomatic relation, and many other things, which is terrifying. Yet, there are still some positive aspects.
For instance, the fact that you can help people with ALS to create digital copies of their voice before they lose their ability to speak. Also, you might have seen on TikTok photos of ancestors or family members who passed away a long time ago, talking or moving again thanks to a filter. Deepfakes can also be used in video games to make the characters look more realistic, or in cinema to incorporate the faces of actors on the stuntman during the dangerous scenes. They could even help doctors to create a diagnosis.
We've seen that most of the time, high-end deepfakes are created to deceive viewers with manipulated fake content. Are they illegal? No, because the technology to create them is developing quickly and the law hasn't caught up. For instance, Tom Cruise deepfakes on TikTok went viral. This raises the questions of the limits of technology and the spread of dangerous pieces of information. You can take a political personality and make him say whatever you want, which can confuse society. They are becoming more and more realistic and easy to create with applications.
Nowadays, the short videos platforms have a big issue: disinformation, fake news, and should consider developing tools to prevent deepfakes. So how to counteract deepfakes? There are so many ways. Firstly, always double-check information and look at the source. If it's a certified channel or a newspaper, it must be true because one of the 5 core values of a journalist is accuracy. Furthermore, Detect Fakes is a website to detect deepfakes and identify subtitles to know if a video has been algorithmically manipulated. Look at the facial expressions of people on a deepfake. Does the person act and speak normally? Is his speech coherent?
There are no telltale signs. You have to be extremely careful about those details: blinking and off, shadows, facial hair. Also, a country must decide which deepfake is acceptable or not, or pass laws to educate the public about this issue. Now, you have all the tools to spot a deepfake and avoid misinformation and fake news.
Jeanne d'Arc. Furthering the topic entitled Representation, several students in 13th grade and majoring in English Contemporary Studies will show their works off.
Vous êtes en train de regarder la suite de notre émission. Afin de poursuivre sur le thème de la représentation, quelques élèves en terminale et étudiants en anglais monde contemporain vont vous présenter leurs travaux. To begin, Jeanne and Samaita wanted... Ah oui? Non, c'est moi. Là, c'est moi. To begin, Jeanne and Samaita wanted to shed a light on the following question: what makes you American?
Pour commencer, Jeanne et Samaita souhaitaient clarifier la question suivante: qu'est-ce qu'il fait de vous un Américain ou une Américaine?
Let's have a look.
What is the American dream? To begin with, the American dream is a set of beliefs that drives many American citizens. The term was coined by the writer and historian James Truslow Adams in his best-selling 1931 book, Epic America, in which he describes it as the dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement. This set of beliefs includes notions of individual rights, freedom, democracy, and equality. It is centered around the belief that each individual who arrives in the United States can build a successful and financial life with hard work, courage, and perseverance without distinction of religion, color of skin, or customs. In the 17th century, Americans built this image of a land where people could reach success because it was seen as a promised land where dreams could become true. Then, the American dream is an idealization. Nevertheless, this vision of the American way of life comes from the post-war period. As the United States emerged victorious, they were quickly seen as a powerful country to follow. The products of American soldiers were given to other foreign soldiers during and after the war, only accentuating their power. From then on, we see the Americans only by their way of life. However, is this a reality or a myth? The American dream aims to give hope to people about the possibility to reach a successful life. However, since the 1970s, an income inequality has increased in the American society. The American real estate market used every American's dream of having their own home through home loans, and a lot of Americans are now living below the poverty line. Moreover, racism and discrimination towards minorities as Black community hasn't really disappeared in the American society. All this calls into question the equality of opportunity promoted by the American dream.
Well, I hope that now you know a bit more on the American state of mind.
Let's move on to a topical issue well known for everyone. Climate change is indeed raising great concern as regards the future of the environment as well as the future of mankind. Throughout a 5-minute report, I will deal with some solutions which need to be applied so as to hope for a better future.
Le réchauffement climatique soulève en effet de grandes inquiétudes pour ce qu'il est du futur de l'environnement ainsi que de celui de l'humanité. À travers un court reportage, Valentin va traiter des solutions nécessaires afin d'espérer un futur meilleur.
Let's watch this on screen.
Nowadays, cities are often concentrations of greenhouse gases because of many factors that do not help in the struggle against global warming. Indeed, traffic is causing a lot of greenhouse gases emissions. Furthermore, cities inhabit many people who warm them up when it's cold and who are using air conditioning when it's hot, as for instance. Eventually, the majority of cities are also surrounded by polluting industries. Therefore, the necessity to find alternatives to become eco-friendly in the way we live is vital. And fortunately, solutions exist, except that we have to apply them. Let's move on to the core of the subject. how can we organize and take action to move things forward? Today, I will introduce two main subjects, fluxes and waste, which demand to experience some alterations to struggle against gruesome fate. With regards to traffic, the alternative, as simple as it gets, mass transit. In fact, a lot of people drive daily so as to go from home to work and vice versa. In addition to using such modes of transport, people are often alone in their car instead of carpooling with their workmates, or easier, use mass transit. I admit, you might say that cars mean independence, comfort and liberty. You can drive anytime, anywhere. But actually, public transport allows you to work, read, watch some films or videos, get some rest, or just scroll through your news feed. Perhaps you could have an eye contact with a beautiful man or beautiful woman, have a crush, fall in love, marry, have children, and they lived happily ever after. More seriously, if this solution is applied at a serious scale, it could considerably curb carbon emissions and thus limit greenhouse effect. Moreover, you could emit less smoke and less pollution, which would improve our air quality and people's health, including yours. Besides, recycling and reuse must come without thinking. Firstly, the incineration of waste is incrementally emitting CO2 because of the growth of household garbage. Some would state that when it's burned, it's gone, thus no problem. However, figures might surprise you. According to a case study released in 2020 by Zero Waste Europe, 1 ton of incinerated garbage emits roughly 1 ton of carbon dioxide. I agree, it's a lot, but we are not the problem. Institutions are, because they are not investing enough in more ecological ways to manage rubbish. So yes and no. Indeed, we can think that the governments are not helping the situation. Nonetheless, we also have a part of responsibility in it. We have to significantly reduce domestic garbage by purchasing bulk products, as for example. Avoid buying a bag in stores every time you shop. Bring yours with you before leaving your home sweet home. If you have a garden or a place of vegetation at home, do not hesitate to put green waste in a little area such as peels or even eggshells. 2 advantages: no need to buy compost, and furthermore, you create a tiny biodiversity by you and for you only. Believe you me, plants and worms will thank you. Concerning clothes, try to donate them when they are still usable. Otherwise, have a preference for recycling them in special bins. I promise you, whether you apply this advice, it would already be a serious step forward. So yes, Donald, climate change exists, and this is our fault. I know, it hurts. Yet, we are also the ones who can solve this issue by changing our way of life. Everyone can change. Y'all, and you too, Donald. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Valentin. I'll make sure to take bags before leaving my home sweet home. So, as to carrying on climate change, Tolene will throw a light on the reasons why Americans are considerably participating to warm our atmosphere.
Afin de continuer sur le réchauffement climatique, Tolene va clarifier les raisons pour lesquelles les Américains et les Américaines sont en train de réchauffer notre atmosphère de manière considérable.
Watch this on your screen.
Calls for our attention, since, in fact, global warming has become a common topic nowadays. That's why I've decided to discuss this issue by shining a light on the Americans' attitude and state of mind. As we know, America is kind of the world's leader. It's therefore essential to figure out their position regarding the environment. First of all, I would like to tell you about their carbon emission, then on their state of mind, ending by discussing the potential solutions to prevent global warming. Otherwise, to make it clear, global warming relies on carbon gas emissions, which overheat the atmosphere. What's crystal clear is that the United States of America is the all-time biggest and worst greenhouse gas emitter on the planet. Even if China now emits more than the US, you have to keep in mind that the Chinese population is much bigger than the American one, which proves America's domination of fuel consumption. To figure it out, in North America, the top 10% of people by income produce nearly 73 tons of carbon dioxide per person annually. In Europe, the top 10 earners release 29 tons. In other words, the largest share of global greenhouse gases emitted since the Industrial Revolution comes from the US. Once we understand how impactful they are, we can take a look on their state of mind. Most people recognize the danger of global warming. The overall public understanding that climate change is happening, affecting the weather and harming Americans is at all-time record highs. For example, Americans who think global warming is happening outnumber those who think it's not. Moreover, they blame the government for doing too little to reduce the climate change effects. We observe a division within the American policy. In fact, Republicans see more risk than the Democrats when it comes to the economic effects of climate policies. Around half of Republicans said in 2019 that such policies hurt the economy. In contrast, most Democrats said climate policies either help or make no difference to the economy, it worth the cost. This explains Trump's attitude regarding climate policies. Indeed, he slowed all the actions. Citizens have finally understood the situation. The current government is on the Democratic side. Does it mean that solutions have been found? Well, the US have already made some of the largest cuts of its greenhouse gas emissions. Between 2005 and 2015, US emissions fell 11.5%, largely due to switching to less carbon-intensive fuels like natural gas, even if it's rising again. Biden, successor to Trump, finds himself faced with important problems because of the lack of effort provided by the former president. Biden administration proposed stricter fuel economy and emission standard for passenger vehicles whose model is between 2023-2026, and as a phase down in the production of and consumption of hydrocarbons over the 15 next years.
Hoping that the situation will change for the better, let's now turn to literature that tackles global warming, especially if nothing changes in the future. Eliabelle will now tell you more about climate change, aka Cli-Fi, with her report.
Tournons-nous maintenant vers la littérature qui traite du changement climatique, plus particulièrement si rien ne change dans le futur. Eliabelle va désormais nous en dire plus sur la fiction climatique.
Today we are going to discuss about a subject that affects our society, environmental issues, but more precisely Cli-Fi. Cli-Fi is short for climate fiction, which is originally a literary genre, which aims to raise awareness about climate change instead of just providing scientific data to do so. According to the famous newspaper The Guardian, this is the new way to talk about climate change. This kind of novel that has been trendy for several years now generally takes the form of post-apocalyptic narratives, where characters evolve in a world ravaged by the effects of climate change. Based on recognized scientific work and on credible anticipation scenarios, this literary genre is expected to win more audiences in the future, especially among policymakers. The fact that environmental issues are spreading especially in the world of novels can perhaps show readers the seriousness of things and make them want to know more about these problems. Especially today, the media don't talk much about environmental issues, so it enables readers not to forget and get aware of what is going on. For example, Paolo Bacigalupa, a writer who wrote Water Nights, in his novel imagines what the war for access to water might look like in a few decades. C'est ça. In an interview, he said that he wrote this novel saying, quote, "The reason I write about climate is because it will shape much of our future. And I think books are places where readers give up their defenses a little bit." They are therefore more permeable to information, to message. Fiction readers project their own lives into the narrative, imagining how they react in this or that circumstance. If you had the opportunity to live the life of a climate refugee and to see the disturbances of a climate that is collapsing, this experiment will inform you much better than reading the raw data, necessarily less visceral, issued by scientific bodies. End of the quote. In my opinion, novels written by these writers are based on their fears, which also lead to fear for the reader, but for the good cause. Now that we know better about climate fiction, try and do something for our planet.
Thanks, Yaba, for having enlightened us on cli-fi. Let's now concentrate on a column proposed by Chloe. Hello, Chloe.
Hello.
You're with us today to talk about the recent film called Don't Look Up.
Concentrons-nous maintenant sur une chronique proposée par Chloé. Elle est avec nous aujourd'hui pour parler du récent film Don't Look Up.
The floor is now
Sorry.
yours, no problem.
So this movie actually showed up for the first time in December 2021 on the platform Netflix. Since its release, Don't Look Up imposed itself in the ranking of the 100 most viewed films on the platform. Well, this movie tells us a lot about our current society and environmental crisis. It also represents our society in a satirical way, and it could be referred as a disaster comedy.
Ce film est paru en décembre 2021 sur la plateforme Netflix. Depuis sa sortie, Don't Look Up s'est imposé dans le classement des 100 films les plus vus sur la plateforme. Il nous parle de notre société actuelle et des impacts de la crise environnementale. Il représente notre société de manière satirique. On peut alors le qualifier de comédie catastrophe.
In fact, if you ask me what is the pitch, I will sum it up by saying that two scientists want to warn humanity through the media that a giant comet is about to destroy Earth. This comet is definitely the symbol of climate deregulation. We talk then about cosmical denial because this movie is a reflection on the inaction of our government to face global warming. The world is from now on unable to take or to listen the truth of the scientists. For example, the last report from the IPCC, also published in December 2021, made less noise than Don't Look Up, which shows how capital cli-fi is to raise people's awareness in general.
Si vous me demandez quel est le synopsis de ce film, je le résumerai en disant que deux scientifiques veulent avertir l'humanité par le biais des médias qu'une comète géante est sur le point de détruire la Terre. Cette comète est sans aucun doute le symbole d'une dérégulation du climat. Quant à ce film, c'est une réflexion sur l'inaction des politiques face au réchauffement climatique. On parle alors d'un déni cosmique. Le monde d'aujourd'hui est incapable d'écouter ou d'accepter la vérité des scientifiques. Par exemple, le dernier rapport du GIEC, publié également en décembre 2021, a fait moins de bruit que le film Don't Look Up, ce qui montre à quel point les cli-fi sont aujourd'hui capitales pour sensibiliser la population.
So this movie denounces several subjects, such as the media domination on public thought, but also the denigration of scientists, and it criticizes a lot the capitalist system and the social media addiction. It stages caricatural figures embodied by some of the most famous actors from our generation, such as Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, or Meryl Streep. These figures depict aspects from our current society in an ironical way, like Peter Ashwell, who reminds of the creator of Apple's phones.
Ainsi, ce film dénonce plusieurs sujets, tels que l'influence des médias sur l'opinion publique, le dénigrement des scientifiques qui critiquent notre société capitaliste et l'addiction aux réseaux sociaux. Il met en scène des personnages caricaturés et incarnés par certains des acteurs les plus célèbres de notre génération, tels que Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep ou Jennifer Lawrence. Ces personnages dépeignent de manière ironique des aspects de notre société actuelle, comme par exemple Peter Ashwell, qui rappelle le créateur des téléphones Apple.
From a first point of view, this movie can be considered as a masterpiece, which can help people to combat the self-deception and to face the truth of the predicaments of our society and environment. In
on the other hand, this movie shines a light concern a part of the truth, since maybe the rulers will change things, but actually, this is debatable. After all, it will be your turn to form your own opinion. My piece of advice, you should take with you some hanky, because this movie will make you either cry or laugh.
Premièrement, ce film peut être considéré comme un chef-d'œuvre qui peut aider les gens à combattre leur auto-illusion et à faire face à la dure réalité qui affecte notre société et notre environnement. D'autre part, ce film met en lumière une partie de la vérité, car peut-être que les dirigeants peuvent changer les choses, mais cela reste contestable. Après tout, ce sera à vous de vous faire votre propre opinion. Mon conseil, emportez un mouchoir avec vous, car ce film vous fera rire ou pleurer.
You make me want to watch it at home, and I'll make sure to do it. Thank you, Chloe, for having been on stage with us.
Thank you.
Let's now look at Leanne's work dealing with one of the main causes of the current situation, overconsumption.
Regardons maintenant le travail de Léane et de Lauriane concernant une des causes majeures du changement climatique, la surconsommation.
A report will be shown to you right now.
Did you know that 62% of renewed funds are still functional? Societal overconsumption is a major problem today. This is how we will try to understand the way we picture the world through overconsumption. To make it clearer, we will first define and illustrate overconsumption. Then we will explain the negative effects of overconsumption as well as some brief solutions.
First of all, overconsumption is a process of overexploitation, a necessary need to purchase in the first place. Overconsumption manifests in various ways. The one that causes shortages, drought, or even deaths today is overconsumption of water. Do you realize that 30% of the world population does not even have access to drinking water? Unfortunately, this is due to only part of the problem, because in some countries, such as the case of the Uzbekistan, water is running out due to its overconsumption, in particular the Aral Sea, part of which is dry due to massive exploitation of cotton.
Indeed, thanks to cotton, we create textiles, which are a major cause of overconsumption. Fast fashion accentuates this phenomenon by renewing their collections up to 36 times against the usual 4 times following the 4 seasons, which leads to both polluting, overconsumption, but also a fashion effect for the youngest.
Did you also know that buying already consumed phones save 76.95 kg of CO2 and therefore consumes 11 times less than a new phone, knowing that on average a person changes the phone every 20 months? A study has shown that a phone's life lasts 3 years on average. Moreover, leaving your charger plugged in without using it and leaving the lights on uselessly consumes precious energy.
The confinement has accentuated a new type of overconsumption linked with basic necessities and more precisely food. Indeed, in 2020, a shortage of toilet paper and pasta took place in many stores in the world. To conclude, it is essential to act. If we do nothing, the earth will perish in 3 years. We know it. Most of us realize that overconsumption is a prominent issue, but some of us don't want to react because they think it's the future generation that has to act.
This is why people are getting more and more aware, in particular through advertisements. It therefore became essential for the better future to change mentalities. Do you want to see grandchildren perishing because of your inactivity?
Welcome, Kéliane et Lycée Jeanne d'Arc. As you're with us, let's discuss the topic you wanted to display, fast fashion. Could you explain it to us?
Bienvenue, Kéliane. Comme vous êtes avec nous, vous vouliez parler de votre sujet, la fast fashion. Est-ce que vous pourriez nous expliquer en quoi ça consiste?
Hello. Considering the predicament in which planet Earth is because notably of our overconsumption, I have decided to consider what could be the solutions to reduce our consumption of clothes.
Compte tenu de la situation difficile dans laquelle se trouve la Terre, et notamment à cause de notre surconsommation, j'ai décidé de réfléchir aux solutions qui pourraient être mises en œuvre pour réduire notre consommation de vêtements.
Fast fashion refers to a movement of brands to produce clothes very quickly, very often, and for cheap. Fast fashion refers to describes cheap, stylish, and mass-produced clothes that have a huge impact on the environment. These garments appeal to shoppers because they are affordable and trendy, but because they are quickly go out of style, and but because they aren't built to last and quickly go out of style, these clothes are quickly discarded and peeling up in landfills.
La fast fashion désigne un mode de commercialisation ou un modèle économique des marques qui produisent des vêtements très rapidement, de manière continue et à bas prix. La fast fashion décrit également des vêtements bon marché, dans l'air du temps et produits en masse qui ont un impact énorme sur l'environnement. Ces vêtements attirent les consommateurs parce qu'ils sont abordables et tendances, mais comme ils ne sont pas conçus pour durer et qu'ils se démodent rapidement, ils sont rapidement jetés et s'accumulent dans les décharges.
Fast fashion is criticized for its many social and environmental consequences. Fast fashion is a polluting industry which is very voracious in energy, human resources, and raw materials. It hides an ugly reality, sweatshops, hills and ecological disasters, human tragedies, etc. It works thanks to a very specific mix, low-cost production in Asian countries, as they are generally cheaper than in the West, a very fast production rate, raw materials of low quality, and massive advertising investments.
La fast fashion est critiquée pour ses nombreuses conséquences sociales et environnementales. C'est une industrie polluante, très vorace en énergie, en ressources humaines et en matières premières. Elle cache une réalité peu glorieuse, ateliers clandestins, désastres sanitaires et écologiques, tragédies humaines et bien d'autres encore. Elle est possible grâce à un fonctionnement très spécifique, une production à faible coût dans les pays asiatiques, car la main-d'œuvre y est moins chère qu'en Occident. Un rythme de production très rapide, des matériaux bruts de faible qualité et des investissements publicitaires massifs.
The real price of fast fashion is not visible at the purchase, yet its negative impact and damage on the planet and on humans is immeasurable. The counterpart of fast fashion is massive soil pollution. For example, to reduce costs, fast fashion still favors non-renewable materials, crops and processing processes such as dyeing also require a large amount of chemicals. To this can be added the waste from these productions, which end pouring into surrounding fields and rivers. These chemicals eventually pollute water, soil, and poison local populations.
Le coût réel de la fast fashion n'est pas visible à l'achat. Pourtant, son impact négatif et ses dommages sur la planète et sur les humains sont incommensurables. Le coût réel de la fast fashion est la pollution massive des sols. Par exemple, pour réduire ses dépenses, la fast fashion privilégie les matières non renouvelables, les cultures et les procédés de transformation, comme la teinture, qui nécessite également une grande quantité de produits chimiques. À cela s'ajoutent les déchets issus de ces productions, qui finissent par se déverser dans les champs et les rivières environnantes. Ces produits chimiques finissent par polluer l'eau, les sols et empoisonnent les populations locales.
This said, let's see the bright side of things now. So there are my tips to reduce our environmental impact when it comes to clothing and fashion. Buy less, buy clothes from sustainable brands, buy better quality, Think twice before throwing out your clothes. Donate to your family, friends, or to charity. Put them in the textile bin, textile recycling bin, or buy the second-hand, rent and swap and rent clothes.
Ceci dit, voyons maintenant les bons côtés des choses. Voici mes conseils pour réduire votre impact sur l'environnement en matière de mode. Achetez moins, achetez des vêtements de marque respectueuses de l'environnement, achetez de la meilleure qualité, réfléchissez-y à 2 fois avant de jeter vos vêtements, donnez-les à vos amis, à votre famille ou à une association caritative, ou encore mettez-les dans des bacs de recyclage de textiles. Et enfin, achetez des vêtements d'occasion, échangez-les ou encore louez-les.
If we start step by step to apply these methods, we can reduce our environmental impact and therefore pollute less. Fast fashion is becoming more and more important these last years. It has become too urgent to get things moving, and that everyone contributes to building off a new society in which we can live in good health.
Si nous commençons petit à petit à appliquer ces méthodes, nous pouvons réduire notre impact sur l'environnement et donc moins polluer. La fast fashion a pris de plus en plus d'importance ces dernières années. Il est donc devenu urgent de faire bouger les choses et que chacun contribue à la construction d'une nouvelle société dans laquelle nous pourrons vivre en bonne santé.
Thanks a lot, Kylian, for giving us plenty of information on fast fashion. Indeed, fast fashion is quite the pest, and over the last few years, a not-so-new solution became quite popular: bartering. Apps like Vinted or TreadMade are widely used in an effort to be mindful of our planet and against other things such as slavery around the world.
En effet, la fast fashion est une véritable plaie. Et ces dernières années, une solution pas si nouvelle est devenue très populaire, le troc. Des applications telles que Vinted ou TradeMade sont largement utilisées dans le but d'être attentifs à notre planète et à d'autres choses comme l'esclavage dans le monde.
To stay on the subject of environment and our future, we will now watch a report Zoé on the High School of the Future.
Pour rester sur le sujet de l'environnement, nous allons maintenant regarder un reportage fait par Gabi et Zoé sur le sujet des lycées du futur.
I think we should be more careful about cigarette butts because they pollute a lot.
Pour moi, il y a le gaspillage, les mégots devant le lycée, le chauffage, le papier toilette pour s'essuyer les mains qui est beaucoup trop souvent mal utilisé. Et ouais, déjà c'est pire.
Ma prof d'ECS qui me donne 15 000 feuilles alors qu'on ne les lit pas.
In my opinion, the main problem about ecology in our high school is the management of water in the toilet and also the use of eating. It's not logical.
Le manque de tri, je dirais.
I think electricity is an ecological disadvantage because it is used non-stop. And also the waste of food.
I think paper is a daily and significant waste, but also water is too much pressure in the taps.
To become more eco-friendly, I think we should teach people how to do it, and then we could recycle and limit the waste of paper, etc.
Moi je pense que ça pourrait être pas mal de mettre la banette de pain plus proche des tables, comme ça les gens ils choisissent pas leur quantité de pain avant d'avoir mangé. Et du coup ils savent comment ils ont faim en fonction de ce qu'ils mangent et du coup on gâche moins de pain. Je pense que ça existe déjà, mais c'est pas mal que quand on mette les boîtes pour jeter les mégots ils soient jetés dedans. Du coup ça serait bien de mettre des sanctions à ceux qui le font pas.
Maybe we could put more ashtray in order to encourage the smoker to put their cigarette butts in it. And we can also recycle in the canteen.
To my mind, it would be smart and convenient to install different vegetables gardens in order to harvest the vegetable in a very short circuit. We could also set up a tray to deposit clothes in order to do second-hand.
I think we should put more beans or adopt animals, for example goats, in order to give them the leftovers of the canteen.
Faire du compost, mettre des poules. Comme ça fait des œufs. Non mais c'est bio. Non mais un lycée avec leurs profs. T'imagines le lycée qui a ses œufs? C'est trop bien. Tu vas chercher les œufs le matin.
Mettre des panneaux solaires, je dirais, et utiliser peut-être des tablettes pour limiter le papier.
Maybe in front of the high school we can find out a way to throw butts because first of all it's one of the most polarizing things and moreover it makes the school unhealthy in appearance.
A new class could be set up to teach and organize environmental actions in the high school.
I think of an establishment greener and where people will make the best of themselves to limit carbon emission.
À quoi il pourrait ressembler? Niveau écologie, avec plein d'arbres.
I think we are going to use more computer in order to decrease our consumption of papers and plastic.
Du coup, je pense que ça serait bien qu'on ait tous des ordinateurs portables, comme ça ferait des économies de papier, qu'il y ait un Wi-Fi stable, parce que la 4G, ça pollue vachement plus que le Wi-Fi, donc s'il y avait un Wi-Fi ou plusieurs box disponibles pour tout le lycée, ça serait bien. Qu'il y ait des chauffages réglables, pour que, par exemple, si le chauffage est réglé pour une journée où il fait froid, sauf que en fin de journée il fait plus chaud et que du coup on a trop chaud, on est obligé d'ouvrir les fenêtres, ça gâche de l'énergie. À l'inverse, en plus, il y a des classes qui sont beaucoup plus exposées que d'autres, donc du coup le chauffage, il ne faudrait pas qu'il soit également réparti, mais il faudrait qu'on puisse le régler nous-mêmes.
This establishment could transmit respect in all its forms, respect for public place and respect for each other.
To my mind, the values of this type of school should be sustainability and respect.
We could be greener and more respectful of the planet.
Les valeurs, ça serait le respect de l'environnement, la légalité, la durabilité.
Well, maybe people will become more connected and more eco-friendly.
Pas de gaspillage du coup, puis faire attention en général à l'écologie, puis sur le plan social, la solidarité, l'entraide, le respect, je pense que c'est bien.
To me, the values of this kind of establishment could be the autonomy, kindness, and the curiosity to get better every day and to improve the future, to make things change.
We are now welcoming Gabi and Zoe so they can analyze the report.
So Zoe, we have seen that people had expectation about the high school of the future, in particular from the ecological and technological advancement that could make the next generation's high school more sustainable and connected. But do you think this project is achievable?
Nous avons constaté que les gens attendaient beaucoup du lycée du futur, et en particulier des avancées écologiques et technologiques, qui pourraient rendre le lycée de la prochaine génération plus durable et plus connecté. Mais pensez-vous que ce projet soit réalisable?
Indeed, Gabi, you are totally right. In fact, nowadays, the health of our planet is an issue with which people have become more and more concerned, which is good news regarding the few years of resources stock that we have left before things became highly controlled and dangerous for our future.
En effet, Gabi, vous avez tout à fait raison. En fait, de nos jours, la santé de notre planète est une question qui préoccupe de plus en plus les gens, ce qui est une bonne nouvelle pour les quelques années de stock de ressources qu'il nous reste, avant que les choses ne deviennent très contrôlées et dangereuses pour notre avenir.
Yes, this is why the idea of a more sustainable high school is much welcome. because it could be an alternative that could allow students to follow a class while respecting the ecosystem.
Oui, c'est pourquoi l'idée d'un lycée plus durable est très bien accueillie, car il pourrait s'agir d'une alternative qui permettrait aux élèves de suivre les cours tout en respectant l'écosystème.
To go back on what you have said, the project is well received because the ecosystem and biodiversity have become the first duty for researchers and scientists all over the world. So now, to answer to your first question, yes, this project is totally conceivable thanks to the science progress around this topic.
Pour revenir sur ce que vous avez dit, le projet est bien accueilli, car l'écosystème et la biodiversité sont devenus le premier devoir des chercheurs et des scientifiques du monde entier. Donc, pour répondre à votre première question, oui, ce projet est tout à fait concevable grâce au progrès de la science à ce sujet.
So, according to you, what kind of alternative will we have in the high school of the future?
Alors, selon vous, quel type d'alternative aurons-nous dans le lycée du futur?
Personally, I think that school will firstly transform their appearance to become more eco-friendly. Indeed, as per scientists and designers, the buildings themselves could be made out from sustainable and local materials. For example, the food that the students eat could be grown on the top of the school's car park, or innovative solutions could be put in place, like a solar panel on the roof to ensure energy production.
Personnellement, je pense que les écoles vont devoir transformer leurs apparences pour devenir plus respectueuses de l'environnement. En effet, selon les scientifiques et les concepteurs, les bâtiments eux-mêmes pourraient être fabriqués à partir de matériaux durables et locaux, comme la nourriture que les élèves mangent, qui pourrait être cultivée sur le parking de l'école, ou des solutions innovantes pourraient être mises en place comme des panneaux solaires sur le toit pour assurer la production d'énergie.
So you mean that future schools will be green schools, as we can see on these pictures?
Oh, vous voulez dire que les futures écoles seront des écoles vertes, comme on peut le voir sur ces photos?
Yes, exactly. It looks like science fiction, right?
Oui, exactement. Ça ressemble à de la science-fiction, non?
Of course, it doesn't look like any school I have seen before, but concerning the learning, the curriculum may change, right? Teaching new themes such as sustainability should become an essential learning.
Bien sûr, elle ne ressemble à aucune des écoles que j'ai vues auparavant. Mais en ce qui concerne l'apprentissage, le programme peut changer, non? En enseignant d'autres thèmes comme la durabilité qui devrait devenir un apprentissage essentiel.
In fact, to go further on that, the prediction considers that they will remain traditional subjects, but lessons about the environment and how to protect it will be dominant.
En fait, pour aller plus loin, les prédictions considèrent qu'il restera des matières traditionnelles, mais que les leçons sur l'environnement et comment les préserver seront dominantes.
But you know that science is advancing faster than we think. I heard that a new green school in New Zealand will put this issue at the heart of everything it does, leading students to a more green education closer to nature.
Mais vous savez que la science progresse plus vite qu'on ne le pense. J'ai entendu dire qu'une nouvelle école verte en Nouvelle-Zélande mettrait cette question au cœur de tout ce qu'elle fait, en conduisant les élèves à une éducation visionnaire, plus proche de la nature.
Yes, of course. This is evidence that the future of our planet could be hopeful if now we act fast enough. Sorry.
C'est la preuve que l'avenir de notre planète peut être porteur d'espoir si nous agissons assez rapidement.
But not too fast, because personally I don't want my kids to have robots instead of teachers.
Mais pas trop vite, car personnellement, je ne veux pas que mes enfants aient des robots à la place des enseignants.
Don't worry, Gabi. It is clear that technology has its expense, but the predictions speak more about the introduction of more attractive e-learning, with cloud storage, creating paperless system, and tablets to replace school books. Indeed, they even talk about introducing virtual reality experiments to make students more engaged in the learning process.
Ne vous inquiétez pas, Gabi. Il est clair que la technologie a un coût, mais les prédictions parlent davantage de l'introduction d'un apprentissage en ligne, attrayant avec le cloud storage et stockage dématérialisé, créant des systèmes sans papier et des tablettes pour remplacer les livres scolaires. Elle parle même de l'introduction d'expériences de réalité virtuelle pour rendre les étudiants plus engagés dans l'apprentissage.
Okay, in your opinion, Zoe, could it better prepare the younger people about the working world that they are about to meet?
À votre avis, cela pourrait-il mieux préparer les jeunes au monde du travail qu'ils vont rencontrer?
In my view, totally, because according to my research, I found that the insertion of technology will be supported by a better tracking of student desire and progress to perfectly target the difficulties and capacities or the interests of our future workers in order to support them and drive them toward the best path for them.
À mon avis, tout à fait, car d'après mes recherches, j'ai trouvé que l'insertion de la technologie sera soutenue par un meilleur suivi des désirs et des progrès des étudiants, pour cibler parfaitement les difficultés et les capacités ou les intérêts de nos futurs travailleurs, pour les soutenir et les conduire vers la meilleure voie pour eux.
Well, education is about to see a big shift during the next few years.
Eh bien, l'éducation est sur le point de connaître un grand changement au cours de ces prochaines années.
It's enhancing, do you think so?
C'est encourageant, vous ne trouvez pas?
Yes, it's so wonderful. So, to put it in a nutshell, the next project that will compose the school of our children is based on teaching new things and students about human-induced consequences and empowering them to choose in order to create future citizens aware about the issues of their world and how to protect it.
Oui, c'est merveilleux. Donc pour résumer, le prochain projet qui compose l'école de nos enfants, qui est basé sur enseigner aux étudiants les conséquences des activités humaines et leur donner les moyens de choisir, afin de créer de futurs citoyens conscients des problèmes de leur monde et la manière de le protéger.
Exactly. Indeed, we also have to give them an access to technology for a better attractive learning, and also monitoring them for what they have to do to measure their appeal and bring a better young tracking.
En effet, nous pouvons aussi leur donner accès à la technologie pour un apprentissage plus attrayant et contrôler ce qu'ils font pour mesurer leurs attraits et améliorer le suivi des jeunes.
I too would have liked to grow potatoes on the roof of my high school.
Les futures générations d'étudiants sont bien chanceux parce que j'aurais moi aussi aimé cultiver des patates sur le toit de mon lycée.
But enough talk. Let's turn to another aspect of representation, namely space representation, with the report on Thomas Pesquet made by Camille and Amelia.
Concentrons-nous maintenant sur un autre aspect de la représentation, plus précisément la représentation de l'espace, avec ce reportage sur Thomas Pesquet par Camille et Amelia.
Since the Cold War, an ideological war between the USSR and the United States, space has become an irreachable utopian place for ordinary people. Space then rapidly became a new frontier. This aspect has been reinforced with the representation of space in cinema, mainly shown in the science fiction category. In it, space is represented as a dangerous place, filled with secrets and strange creatures coming from the depth of space and which suddenly begin to interact with human species. These extravagant films question the place of humans in the universe as well as the possible existence of another form of extraterrestrial life. Thomas Pesquet is a 44-year-old Frenchman from Rouen who is known to this day as an astronaut. Since his first mission in space called Proxima, the Frenchman has managed to reach new heights, becoming the most experienced European astronaut and the first Frenchman to become commander of the International Space Station. Thanks to his status, he has been able to desacralize the cliches made by films surrounding space. He has proven the possibility of living in space for a long time, 6 months in space, with the help of new technologies such as multiplication of orbital stations, or make the communication easier between Earth and space. He illustrated this idea by publishing on social networks a great deal of photographs. of the Earth he took throughout his last trip, which offers the population hope for the future of humanity. However, he remains down to earth, in that he does acknowledge the fact that the time being is not possible to live on another planet, contrary to the facts fabricated by science fiction. Finally, Thomas Pesquet will allow France to become a new space ambassador, thereby increasing its influence, and has such power on the world, undoubtedly contribute to France's soft power.
To move on with our next subject, space representation in sci-fi movies, we will welcome Eliabelle.
Et pour continuer avec notre prochain sujet, la représentation de l'espace dans les films de science-fiction, nous allons accueillir Eliabelle.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Je vais bien, merci.
All right. So, what is it that you want to convey about space representation in sci-fi movies?
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez transmettre par rapport à la représentation de l'espace dans les films de science-fiction?
Well, starting the moment movies became popular and improved their making process, it was almost inevitable for movies to tackle the subject, nearly unknown and unfamiliar at the time of space. Through many years, the representation of space in movies, especially American movies, evolved as we made progress through space research.
À partir du moment où les films sont devenus populaires et où leur processus de réalisation s'est amélioré, il était presque inévitable que les films n'abordent pas le sujet, presque inconnu et peu familier à l'époque, de l'espace. Pendant de nombreuses années, la représentation de l'espace dans les films, en particulier les films américains, a évolué au fur et à mesure des progrès de la recherche spatiale.
A view on space that was at first quite inaccurate soon became the opposite, as the special effects in movies also improved to show us more realism. If we take the example of Planet of Apes, the first movie being released in 1968, we can indeed see it age pretty badly, unless some nostalgia is through. The spaceship is clearly simplified, and the buttons on the command board could seem to be made by a kid because of how awful they look. Special effects that fortunately did get better in the 2001 version.
Une vision de l'espace qui est au départ assez inexacte s'est rapidement transformée en son contraire, car les effets spéciaux des films se sont également améliorés pour nous montrer plus de réalisme. Si l'on prend l'exemple de La planète des singes, dont le premier film est sorti en 1968, on peut effectivement constater qu'il a assez mal vieilli, à moins d'une certaine nostalgie. Le vaisseau spatial est clairement simplifié, tandis que les boutons du tableau de commande pourraient sembler avoir été fabriqués par un enfant. Des effets spéciaux qui, heureusement, se sont améliorés dans la version 2001.
To you, is space representation only manifested through special effects?
Pour vous, est-ce que la représentation spatiale est seulement représentée à travers des effets spéciaux?
Well, no. The change in space representation through the years is indeed not only manifested by special effects, but by how the image of space itself is represented, as well as its issues. For most movies made before the 2000s, they evoke the idea of aliens, along with the green alien cliché.
L'évolution de la représentation de l'espace au fil du temps ne se manifeste pas seulement par les effets spéciaux, mais par la manière dont l'image de l'espace elle-même est représentée, ainsi que par ses enjeux. La plupart des films réalisés avant les années 2000 évoquent l'idée d'extraterrestre, mais avec le cliché de l'extraterrestre vert.
Something that would be quite representative of that time, since a lot of people were wondering about their existence. But those aliens, as the years passed, became more realistic, like the aliens in the movie Avatar, made in 2009, and some became more frightening, like the aliens from the Alien saga, whose latest movie, Alien Covenant, came out in 2017.
Quelque chose qui serait représentatif de cette époque, puisque beaucoup de gens s'interrogeaient sur leur existence. Mais ces aliens, au fil des années, sont devenus de plus en plus réalistes, comme ceux du film Avatar, réalisé en 2009, qui ont mis de côté le cliché, et certains sont devenus plus effrayants, comme les aliens de la saga Alien, dont le dernier film, Alien Covenant, est sorti en 2017.
So, how would you depict the evolution of this representation?
Comment pourriez-vous décrire l'évolution de la représentation spatiale?
Well, we can rightfully say that the representation of space through time started with a childish aspect to end up with a more mature approach. The issues that can happen while in space also show a change. The first space movies used to give us the idea that we could control space and that it cannot do us any harm. Yet, they now even make us fear space as we encounter issues such as being stuck in a spaceship without oxygen, like in Gravity, made in 2014, or terrifying monsters or conflict between planets.
On peut légitimement dire que la représentation de l'espace à travers le temps a commencé par un aspect très enfantin, pour finir par une approche un peu plus mature. Les problèmes qui peuvent survenir dans l'espace montrent également un changement. Les premiers films sur l'espace donnaient l'idée que nous pouvions contrôler l'espace et qu'il ne pouvait pas nous faire de mal. Aujourd'hui, ils nous font même craindre l'espace, car nous voyons des problèmes tels que le fait d'être coincé dans un vaisseau spatial sans oxygène, comme dans Gravity, réalisé en 2014, des conflits entre planètes ou des monstres terrifiants.
To conclude, space representation, especially in American movies, through the years, confronted us to the harsh reality that is space, while enlightening us more about this field.
Pour conclure, la représentation de l'espace, notamment dans les films américains au fil des années, nous a confrontés à la dure réalité qu'est l'espace, tout en nous éclairant davantage sur ce domaine.
Well, Eliabel, thank you for coming. That was quite interesting.
Eh bien, Eliabel, merci d'être venue, c'était vraiment intéressant.
Thanks for having me.
Merci de m'avoir reçu.
Well, it's been a real pleasure to be with you today and manage to do this all-English program with you today.
Cela a été un vrai plaisir de passer ce moment avec vous et de parvenir à réaliser cette émission intégralement en anglais. A program that has been entirely translated into French to make sure everybody would be able to understand what we have been dealing with when it comes to the topic of today's program.
Une émission qui a été intégralement traduite en français pour s'assurer que vous seriez tous en mesure de comprendre ce dont nous avons parlé en ce qui concerne le sujet des representations.
Representations.
Okay.
On va dire ça.